Hello, I'm David Lemieux, again here to talk to you about something that's coming out on CD very soon. Actually, it's probably out now, which is why we're doing the video. Again, the weather, it's nice, but it's a little windy and there's some waves, so I'm going to talk kind of loud and hope that it drowns out the sound of nature, but nonetheless, nothing I can do about it, so hopefully you can hear me through the din. Otherwise, you get to hear some nice nature, which is good, I guess. Better than hearing me say that. So, obviously, here to talk about spring of 1990, The Other One. Also known as Volume 2, call it whatever you want. A rose by any name, it's still a rose. And this is outstanding music. There's a lot to talk about, and I'm going to try and keep it brief because, you know, I can go on for 15 minutes about one show. So this is 8 shows, so I'm not going to go on for 15 minutes about that, about each of them. Maybe combined, I don't know. Obviously, you've now heard about this. Spring 1990, The Other One. The 8 shows from the Spring 1990 tour that have not yet been released. As we might have mentioned elsewhere, as we've kind of announced this thing, that between the first Spring 90 box, which was 18 CDs, and then Dozin' at the Nick and Tear Up Unlimited, and now this 23 CD box set, the second biggest box set in Grateful Dead history behind Europe 72, of course. Yeah, it's a good one. There's so much to talk about. So, okay, I'll tell you the philosophy on it. The first one, as you probably remember, there were 6 cities on the Spring 1990 tour. We did 1 show from each of the cities. This one, we wanted to make sure something from each city was covered that hadn't been released, so obviously there was at least 1 show from each city. And in a couple of cases, specifically Nassau and Atlanta, there were 2 shows from each of those cities. So, kind of, well, where do I start? Probably should have taken some notes, right? No, I'm okay. So the first thing to talk about is, again, it's 8 complete shows spread over 23 CDs. They're all 3 CD sets except for the first show from 3/14. The first night of the tour fit really nicely on 2 CDs. Second thing you should know right up front, Jeffrey Norman. Here we are in early July 2014. Jeffrey Norman has been in Bob Weir's studio, TRI, since December of 2013, right through, I guess, like end of May of 2014. He spent a full 5 months mixing this. Everything was mixed from the master 24-track analog tapes. I know on the first box we didn't do that. We used the live mixes that John Cutler had produced in the truck. Sound fantastic. These sound different. They sound great. Needless to say, Jeffrey Norman, his mixes always sound really, really good. And he spent, like I say, 5 months on this box set. He really did his due diligence in terms of making sure everything was just exactly perfect. And Dave Glasser mastered everything. So you've kind of got that triumvirate of John Cutler's excellent recordings, Jeffrey Norman mixing at Bob Weir's state-of-the-art studio, and then you've got Dave Glasser, a Grammy-winning engineer, mastering everything. So you've got all that. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, that when we did the first box, 6 shows, 1 from each city, that was an incredibly hard box set to produce because everything that we left off that box was as good as, maybe in some cases even better than what we put into that box. Luckily, we kind of knew 2 years ago that we were going to do this box set, so it didn't hurt that much that we were leaving stuff off. And it's funny, I still have the list. When I submitted the first list of 6 shows on the first box to Rhino 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when I submitted it, I still had a couple of months after I'd submitted that to really get things set before the mastering started. And between the time I submitted the first 6 shows, the list of 6 shows, set in stone, things I was completely happy, comfortable with releasing as such, in that box, 5 of them changed. The only one that didn't change was 3/22/90, the Hamilton show, which I always knew we wanted. I think we wanted to do the 3/22 show. Not that it's head and shoulders above 3/21, the one that's in this new box, but because of that Scarlet Fire, because the first set just had some great cool stuff beating on down the line, must have been the Roses, and the Hey Jude, really a remarkable, remarkable show. So aside from that, the other 5 shows that are in that Spring 90 box were originally going to be different shows that are finally now released in this box. So I'm going to give you a little, well, I don't want to go into detail. We're probably going to do these little videos about each of the 8 shows in the box. So I'm just going to give you a little taste. First show, 3/14/90 show opening, tour opening show. A couple highlights. Feel Like a Stranger in the first set, and of course Loose Lucy, the first version of Loose Lucy in 16 years. Caught everybody by complete surprise. You'll hear the crowd reaction. Crowd goes absolutely nuts. Second set, one of my favorite ways to open a second set is Crazy Fingers, just to kind of, it's going to flow when that happens. Crazy Fingers playing in the band Uncle John's, great show. Second show in the box is the Hartford show, the first night. And Hartford kind of had that vibe. It was a downtown venue, and Hartford, I don't know if it's a rough city or not. I haven't spent enough time there aside from seeing the Dead there, but it's kind of got a rough vibe, whether it's a rough city or not. But it's very appropriate they opened that show with Shakedown Street and a couple of other big highlights, Morning Dew, Iko, great Iko, and a great combination of Truckin' into Spoonful. There's two versions of Truckin' Spoonful in this box, but really a really remarkable show. It's raw. It's in a good way. It's like the band is really, after the kind of pristine perfection of the Cap Center, they hit Hartford and just really let loose as the tour kind of built momentum. Then the third show in the box is the one I just talked about from Hamilton from 3/21. And a couple of real favorites in this. The first set I think is outstanding. Great Victim of the Crime, Standing on the Moon, a great half step. But the second set is just a really cool sequence of things like Hey Pocky Way, Crazy Fingers, Cumberland Blues, a rare second set Cumberland Blues, and then one of my favorite combinations of Estimated He's Gone. I love Estimated into He's Gone. I think it works beautifully. This is one of my favorite renditions of that combination. And then after drums, also excellent versions of Wharf Rat and Throwing Stones. Terrific stuff. Fourth show in the box from the Knickerbocker Arena in Albany. Now the first show, justifiably famous because of Dozin' at the Nick with the playing in the band, the Mind Left Body Jam, etc. The third show, which we put in the first box, also an outstanding show. The middle night, a little under the radar, and I think the one thing to really focus on in the middle night, the one that's in this box, is in the first set, it ends with the double whammy jam, two big jam songs of Birdsong and Let It Grow. Usually Birdsong and Let It Grow did not appear by the late 80s, early 90s in the same set together. Usually Birdsong either ended the set, or maybe Birdsong Music Never Stopped, or Birdsong Promised Land, Birdsong When I Pay My Masterpiece, followed by a Jerry tune to end the set, or Don't Ease Me In or something. But Birdsong Let It Grow ends with two huge jams. Also opens with Greatest Story Ever Told. Very rare that they do that. But the second set is where it's at. And I'll tell you why. Because if you're a fan of Eyes of the World, I'm pretty sure you are. You think 73, 74, that nice, slow, jazzy version, tempo of Eyes of the World. And then by 77, 78, it gets a little faster. Some nights really fast. Think of 11/4/77 at Colgate in Hamilton, New York. Very fast, very good. Really one of my favorite versions. That's not to bag on it. But really by the mid-80s, it was really speeded up. It just kind of had lost the shape of what Eyes of the World once was. And then that goes right through the end of the 1980s. Some very short, maybe 7-8 minute versions of Eyes of the World. And on this night, on 3/25/1990, the Dead, for the first time in a very long time, opened their second set with Eyes of the World. And it is the old rendition, the old tempo of it. I remember this distinctly. Usually Eyes of the World, people danced quite fast because the version was quite fast. I distinctly remember looking around the Nick that night while they were playing this, and it was a complete flow of 16 or 17,000 people, however big that is. It was just a flow during Eyes of the World because everybody was just grooving to this new tempo, or old tempo revisited. To me, it was as big as a return of Loose Lucy, to hear the Dead play Eyes of the World like this. And in typical kind of Dead chemistry, it's amazing that they brought back this arrangement, the jazz arrangement of Eyes of the World, 4 nights before they would play with Branford Marsalis, which they didn't know they were for sure going to play with Branford Marsalis. They certainly didn't know they were going to play Eyes of the World with them. But the fact that they brought back this arrangement just 4 days before they played with Branford, the absolute ultimate perfect song for Branford Marsalis to play with the Grateful Dead, this tempo of it particularly, it blew my mind, really. When I first heard I didn't go to Branford. I saw the first 10 shows right up to the end of the Knickerbocker on this tour. I didn't go to Nassau. I heard Nassau a couple days later, a couple weeks later, and I remember thinking it's perfect Grateful Dead that this happened. We'll get to the Brantford show in a sec. And so the Eyes of the World, there's also other good things at this Albany show. The post drums, you probably know from dozing at the Nick. Oh, low-flying airplane. Okay, so the Knickerbocker, tremendous show. Jeffrey did a wonderful job of the mix on everything in this box, and you'll hear it in the nuances of the Eyes of the World, everybody really playing off each other. And then they hit Nassau. And because we only put one of the shows in the first box, you got 2 Nassau shows in this box, 328, 329. 328, an incredibly solid show. A little underrated because it doesn't have the highlights of the Brantford show the next night, or the Help Slip Franklins and the Addicts of My Life the third night. But the first night, a couple huge highlights. High Time, remarkably good High Time in the first set, which was pretty rare at the time, High Time in 1990. And then, of course, in the second set, they played The Weight by the band, the first time the Grateful Dead performed The Weight. And they did a great job of it. Really, it's a song that, you know, I think was perfectly suited for the Dead. So that's all I'll say about that show. It's just, like I said, it's an incredibly solid show. Everything is played really well. You finish listening, you go, wow. You know, on paper it might not blow you away, but performance-wise it will. The Brantford show, you know, we're going to do these little videos for everything. In particular, I'm going to do one of these for specifically for the Brantford show soon. So we'll get into more specifics, but just say that when the Dead played with special guests, it didn't always elevate the game. You know, the Dead, you know, think of it this way. The Dead were like a 25-year running inside joke where the punchline constantly changed, but they knew it. They always knew the punchline. And then they have a special guest come and sit in with them, and while you're playing live on stage in front of an audience, you've kind of got to explain what the punchline is, not to mention explain what the joke is. With Brantford, there was none of that. From the minute that he came on stage, at the beginning of the first set's also really good. Great Jackstraw Bertha, great We Can Run. But when he came on stage, Birdsong fit in perfectly. But when he came out for the second set, again, opening a second set with Eyes of the World, and again, that nice slow tempo of Eyes of the World, it was an absolute perfect fit. And then it got even better for Estimated Profit, and then Dark Star, where they let loose. And the Dark Star is often overlooked because Eyes of the World was released on Without a Net, Birdsong and So Many Roads box set. So it's often been overlooked, but this is one of, I think, one of the craziest Dark Stars they did in the return to Dark Star after 1989 onward. It just gets way out there, and Brantford contributes like you wouldn't believe. Plus, Jerry's doing MIDI stuff that sounds like another horn. I don't know, it's incredible. Brantford fit in perfectly, and then the post drums, again, Brantford sits in. And then the encore, Knocking on Heaven's Door, I don't think they could have picked a more perfect encore for a saxophonist to play on. He just, again, it's perfection. This is one of those shows that if you look at kind of a top 5, top 10 Grateful Dead show ever, and you're talking Harper College and Cornell and things like that, this one is one of those shows. And finally, happy to get it out there. Like I say, Jeffrey has spent months mixing this, so it's been given the care that a show like this deserves. You're going to love it. So, and I hate to say this as an afterthought, but then there's also 2 more Atlanta shows. But I don't want to say the box peaks at Nassau, but it kind of does. But in a good way, it kind of plateaus. It doesn't drop back down when it gets to Atlanta. Atlanta's got some tremendous moments. The first night has a really interesting first set. Second set, China Rider, so good that it was included on Without a Net. That John Cutler and Phil Lesh picked that one. And then another highlight from that first night I want to point out is the Ship of Fools. And Ship of Fools is a song that can kind of sink or float a show. And if it's not played really, really well, it can kind of, I don't want to say bring things down, but a little bit, it can kind of drag a little bit. But when it's good, it can elevate everything. And this is one of those versions of Ship of Fools. I remember getting a late night text message from Jeffrey Norman while he was mixing this. And he said, man, this Ship of Fools is really good. And Jeffrey loves Ship of Fools, so do I. But, you know, it got Jeffrey so excited that he stopped what he was doing and sent me a text. So that was cool. Great Ship of Fools. Now, the final night of the show, you'd think fatigue would set in after 16 shows of such high level Grateful Dead, and it really doesn't. The first set opens up with Shakedown Street. They're not playing it safe here. Followed by Hell in a Bucket Sugaree, another kind of opening combination, which had followed this great 14 minute version of Shakedown Street, which really gets funky in a good way. And then the second set opens up, interestingly enough, with Estimated Profit. Now, this is 2 tours in a row that the second set tour closing show started with Estimated Profit. And this is after years and years of not opening a second set with Estimated Profit. All of a sudden, they end the fall tour of '89 in Miami with Estimated Profit. They opened the second set with Estimated Profit. And then the final show of the spring tour of 1990, same thing. So I just found that interesting. And aside from that, this is one of the best versions of Estimated Profit you're going to hear. The song itself, great. The jam out of it, outstanding. It reminds me a little bit. There was a version in Toronto, actually, in 1977, so we're talking 13 years before this, 11/2/77, where it just goes to kind of dark star stratospheres, the Estimated jam coming out of it. It's that kind of jam coming out of Estimated, and it goes really cool into Scarlet Begonias, kind of a rare combination there. Then we've got Crazy Fingers and Playing in the Band. And then the post drums is a little straightforward. We get a We Bid You Goodnight closer, kind of very appropriate way to end a tour. So really, we got 159 songs here, 23 CDs, jam-packed with some of the best music the Dead ever played. And I'm not just saying that. This is truly peak level Grateful Dead, and where they might have lacked in some of the bigger jams that they might have done in the 70s and things like that. It certainly made up for it in the consistency of greatness of the performances, where every song, there's really not a dud in here, where any era, any show, you're gonna get a great show and then you're gonna get, oh man, that's the really kind of, they really blew it on this, or the energy was with everything. You don't get that here. It's a really good box. Again, Jeffrey Norman has mixed the whole thing. Packaging looks terrific. We're gonna do probably a whole video. I don't know if we're gonna do a video about the box, but check it out online. The packaging looks spectacular. Nick Merriweather and Blair Jackson did the liner notes, and they both did amazing jobs. Nick did the big liner note, and then Blair did individual show notes. Jessica Desner did the cover art, and there's a lot of cover art, obviously. There's the box itself, front and back. Then there's the 8 digipacks. So there's a whole ton of stuff to explore in this, kind of similar to what we did with the first box set. And again, the sound, well, it truly couldn't be better. Jeffrey was spending a full day or more mixing every song, and I think it really shows, well, or its sound, you'll hear it. So once again, sorry about the waves and the wind, I hope it didn't drown me out, but yeah, I'd rather hear that than me anyway. But really get this. Oh, by the way, the last one sold out in weeks. It wasn't months, it was a few weeks. And my suggestion to you, if you want to get it sooner, because it's summertime. If you're going camping or something and we send out that email, we only have a few left, and you're out camping or something, you're going to miss it. And it's going to sell sooner than later. So do check it out. Really, we're going to put up a lot of audio samples, so you're going to get a chance to really hear it, feel it, both performance and sound quality. Truly, you're going to love it. It's a really good box. We're very happy to finally bring you the second batch, and this kind of completes the spring tour of 1990. Every note of it will have been released once this box comes out. So check it out, probably right here at dead.net or wherever you're watching this. Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next video.